On release, Furina was the most broken and most meta-defining character that we had ever received. And now, with so much power creep going on, many people might be worried that Furina is now irrelevant, especially with Nod Cry not using damage percent, her main source of buffing. There is a serious question: is Furina worth it in 2025? Well, fortunately for Furina lovers, she is still an excellent character, but of course it's not without some nuance. So in this video, we're going to go through a full updated guide to help you decide if you should get Furina and how to make the most out of her if you do. Welcome to Jello Impact, where we build and test every single character to help you decide who you want to wish for and build. The version Luna 1 banners featuring Flynn's and Galon are finally here. If you're planning on spending for these or any future banners, let me recommend Loot Bar. I have been personally using Loot Bar for over a year, and I've spent thousands of dollars on my personal account. They are safe, using currency exchange to get you discounts on the crystals you were going to buy anyways. They have tens of thousands of 5-star reviews, and right now you can get a limited time offer for an even bigger discount than normal. They're very easy to use. Just choose the pack you want, enter your UID and region, and your top up is delivered in minutes. The all-in-one bundle will be available for a special limited time price, allowing you to take advantage of the double top up bonus coming with Luna 1 and Genshin's anniversary. New users also get a 5% coupon, as well as 2 3% coupons for clicking my link. New users clicking my link also get access to a $2 welcome. And if you play other games like Star Rail or Zenless Zone Zero, you can use Loot Bar for them too. It's partnerships like these that allow me to continue bringing the content I do to the channel, as well as supporting my family. So thanks to Loot Bar for sponsoring the video. Starting with her build, you'll want to generally, in this day and age, her best weapon will usually be Favonius Sword. This is a bit less the case in double hydro teams such as Novelette or with Yelan, where you can sometimes get away with going with less energy. But even on Novelette teams, even in double hydro teams, with the advent of Stygian Onslaught and starting with 0 energy, Favonius is mighty tempting and might even be the best for you and for your actual clear time. So it is my general go-to recommendation for Furina. I wouldn't bother fishing for the pipe. I wouldn't bother about, being upset that you don't have festering. I would generally just go with Fav. Her signature can be good, but again, only on those teams where a lot of hydro energy is created. And other crit stat sticks, they are good, of course, for her personal damage, but over time her damage is getting a bit less relevant and energy and buffing is more relevant, hence why Favonius Sword is absolutely my go-to. For her artifacts, I realized I didn't show Favonius Sword. There it is. Ooh, Favonius Sword. I still haven't fished for the pipe, and I have been rewarded for it. Yeah, for artifacts, do not sleep on tenacity. So many people are very reluctant to farm tenacity because you spent so much time in the golden troop domain, and I totally understand. But if you're using Furina for Skirk or for Ayaka or for other characters that scale heavily off of attack, even you're putting her on a Moika team, tenacity is a huge buff. 20% attack for the whole team is really, really, really good. And she doesn't lose that much damage because it is a 2-piece HP set. So she's still getting value out of the 2-piece and she's buffing the attack of the whole team. It's really, really powerful. Do not sleep on this set. It can make a 10+% damage difference for your team for something like a Skirk team. It's really, really, really worth farming. Plus, because Furina's damage is not crazy on Skirk teams, you don't have to have that crazy of a set for switching over to be worth it. Plus, it's available in the Strongbox, so you just might as well. But of course, not every team is attack scaling, or some teams do less personal damage. So Golden Troop for other teams is going to be worth it, and that's the artifacts that you'll want to farm for Novelette teams, Hu Tao teams, etc., etc. For stats, if you're using Favonius Sword, you can almost always get away with HP percent. Although for very certain tricky situations, I have gone with an ER Sans, depending on the very specific rotations and teams that have going. I've gone ER Sans even with Favonius Sword, but usually HP. You do want to go HP Goblet. It is better than Hydro Damage, and Crit Rate or Crit Damage Circlet. ER being the most important thing overall 4 teams that use her burst. There are a couple exceptions to that, and her ER, it varies very much between teams, and it varies very much between builds and between weapons. This is my go-to build, 183 ER, and this is like my Stygian Skirk Furina build, but depending on what you're using, you may get away with more or less. With Stygian, I generally err on the side of more. Teams that will not use ER, if you're using Furina for your Flins, which is actually really, really good for Flins, you really want to make sure you have tenacity, as that is actually her main form of buffing. And this is going to be on a Flins team, it's going to be a no burst Furina. If you watch my Flins guide, you already know about this strategy. But Furina, for me, it outperformed everything except for Ino C6. So, you know, if your Furina is free, tenacity Furina is going to be the way to go, and you'll want to go with tenacity and with as much damage as you can. So you completely ignore ER because you never burst with Furina. You use her skill every other rotation, and you use whatever damage weapon you have, whether it's her signature or whether it's whatever other crit stat stick. Another good weapon, by the way, before we forget, is the key. It is a good weapon. It is, we can put it on the list. It is situationally best, but it has fallen off quite a bit. Again, it does buff EM, which is good for a lot of teams, but it doesn't give any ER. And it is, of course, an HP percent weapon, so it is good for her personal damage. But yeah, not giving her any ER makes it tough to use a lot of the time. But if you have it lying around, there's certain teams that might be good on. So that's build, weapons, and artifacts. Looking at her talents, you're going to want to crown her skill and crown her burst. I would say crowning her skill is a bit less important these days since it is just personal damage, whereas the burst is the buffing. But if you use her with a lot of teams, you know, it's definitely not a waste. Level 90ing is definitely worth it. As an HP scaler, you may as well take advantage of that extra boost in damage. However, level 100 is super not worth it. Not only does she not contribute to a large portion of damage, level 100 does not help her buffing, but level 100 is actually equalized in terms of value across attack scalars and HP scalars. So unlike up to level 90, HP scalars get more value from levels. Up to level 100, it's equalized. So you're much better off leveling someone like Skirk, who actually contributes a lot to your team damage, or Flins, or Moika, or whoever your main DPS is, or your Hyper Bloom trigger. Those are all about equal. I did make a level 100 guide, but yeah, Furina, it's not that you won't get anything from level 100, but it's not worth it compared to an actual DPS. For teams, just as a note, I feel like I have to debunk this every time I do Furina, but she does not require a team-wide healer to be good. And teams with Novelette do not require any healer at all. Novelette can max her fanfare stacks all the way just from C0, and even getting some fanfare stacks with a Bennett is going to vastly outperform trying to force a team-wide healer to get max stacks and then losing out on Bennett's buff. So a regular single target healer is fine. Also Chlorand gets close to maxing out Furina's stacks because Chlorand heals more with Furina's damage bonus passive. If you didn't know, Furina obviously buffs based on HP changes to the team. Her skill reduces your team's HP, and then so you would need another healer to counteract that reduction, and then her burst gives a damage percent buff based on the total team HP changes. And then certain characters like Novelette and Chlorand Novelette perfectly maxes out the stacks and Chlorand gets close, with Chlorand healing more on Furina teams because of the healing bonus. But yeah, otherwise with other characters you do need at least some kind of healer, but it doesn't have to be a team-wide healer. Speaking of teams, I did make this handy dandy chart as to if you main one of these characters, it's worth getting Furina just for those characters. So I do think it's worth it for Skirk and for Novelette. These are the two meta characters, and then these three, I put 3 other characters that are not as meta, but if you really main them and you want to max them out, it is worth getting Furina for them. You could throw some of these other characters in there, like Hu Tao in particular I thought about putting up there. However, Hu Tao's current actual best team is with Inefa, Yelan, and Ino. So if you're watching this pre-banner switchover, you may want to be wishing on the Yelan banner and getting copies of Ino. Kind of sketchy though, because it's 4 stars, but at least getting yourself a copy of Yelan. I expect Columbina, Inefa, Yelan to end up being Hu Tao's best team. Keep an eye out for that, I guess. And these other characters, they can use Furina medium to very well. Chaska uses her excellently, although again, Moika's better. General Escoffier teams, it's kind of worth getting I would actually put Escoffier up to the top. It's kind of worth getting Furina, just if you have Escoffier in general, kind of. Ryo, his best team is kind of Freeze, but it should be melt. So if we ever get a real melt support for Ryo, that actually might make it better. And then these other characters have good teams with Furina, but they also have other good teams that are arguably better, just as good. And then I wouldn't say Furina is like an actual real option for any of these characters on the bottom, but it's an okay option. If you already have Furina, you know, sometimes you may end up using her with these characters, but it's not something I would ever put wishes into. Sino, of course, using Inefa and Xingqiu now. And yeah, I do expect Columbina to make a difference for a bunch of these characters as well. You know, Flynn's will probably move down, not really care about Furina as much. But there's also just something to think about is like, look, you know, she may only be absolute best in slot for a couple characters and only a couple meta characters, but look at how many characters she actually works with. And if you've ever come to Stygian Onslaught or the Abyss or Imaginarium Theater, it's like, oh, I don't have enough, I just don't have enough supports. I don't have enough good supports, synergistic supports. There's a reason why 98% of people used Furina in the Stygian Onslaught, and it's because she just works with so many units. So it's like, yeah, maybe she's not best in slot with as many as she used to be, but she still works with so many. So it's basically like, I would recommend getting Furina to anyone who has spare pulls, and you can make use of Furina on your account. However, if it's like, oh, if I get Furina, then I won't be able to get Columbina, you know, then I might, you know, say, okay, well, you know, maybe it's worth getting Columbina, and, you know, maybe you're maining Arlecchino, and you're maining, you know, maybe you're maining Moika, and you're, you know, so you're doing Arlecchino, Overload, and Moika Melt, and, you know, Mualani, and then maybe Furina doesn't make sense for you. You know, maybe you're really into Nodcry, and you're maining Flynn's, or you're maining Nefer, and then you're maining some other characters. Like, you know, maybe you don't end up needing Furina. So I can see accounts not needing Furina, and I can see accounts really benefiting from Furina. So it kind of has to be based on your account. And if you're not sure, if you're deciding, make sure you join our Discord down below, join the help chat. They can help you decide if Furina is going to be worth it for your account. And while you're down there, subscribe to this channel, because I'll make sure to keep you updated, especially as Columbina comes out. But overall, you probably can't go wrong getting a Furina, but, you know, it doesn't hurt to make sure that it'll actually worth on your account. It's never good to pull blindly, always pull with a plan. Speaking of meta and value, so this is kind of a summary of what I was just talking about. I got ahead of myself. She's great for Skirk and Novelette for meta, generally useful for most accounts. Hydro is a valuable element, and she is very flexible. Some accounts may be able to get away without if leaning hard into Nod-Cry meta or non-Furina units. And also something is she is going down in value currently, but she may go back up in value if damage percent makes a comeback in Shenhe. I could definitely see that. Damage percent has been a large part of the game for all of the game. I'd be surprised if we never went back to damage percent at all, if we always stayed away from damage percent. That would be surprising. So I do expect it makes a comeback. And if it does, that it would make sense that Furina's value would go up. Although it could be that they continue to do things that push her value down. So I could kind of see it going either way. I wouldn't pull based on future potential. I'd pull her based on if you have units that, and if she will really help your account. Now, vertical investment is the next one. And this is a contentious topic because in the past, Furina vertical investment was the best form of vertical investment in the game. If you go check out my old videos, it's like Furina C1 is like better than basically every other DPS's C1, basically better than any weapon. The best thing you could get was Furina C1, Furina C2. That was like the best thing you could get. Nowadays, it's not quite that so. So if we look at Novelette teams and Skirk teams as examples, and again, if you're considering her vertical investment, you may want it tailored to your account specifically. So you'll want to, again, join the Discord for help with your account specifically. But for Novelette and Skirk teams specifically, just as an example, I would recommend getting Inefa before I recommend getting Furina Constellations. I'd recommend getting Novelette C1 or his R1 before Furina Constellations. Only then would I consider her C1, right? For Skirk teams, and of course, R1, if you have a high refined sacrificial Jade and you have a build around it, then I would move his R1 down below Furina. For Skirk teams though, Skirk R1, then Skirk C1 and C2, then Escoffier C1, then Furina C1. And it's like, it's really pushed way down there. So yeah, people sort of underrated, you know, how much damage Skirk was really doing because she got a buff after the pre-release and before the live, and therefore her weapon and constellation end up being a much bigger contributor than people thought. And of course, this isn't the case just for these. You know, Chaska has crazy weapon and crazy early constellations. Those are going to be more worth it than Furina. And that's just the general trend of the new characters, is that they have really, really good early constellations. And Furina C2, it is mostly a personal damage constellation. It doesn't impact buffing a huge amount. It does help a little bit, especially for characters like Arlecchino. It actually allows them to work together, but mostly her C1 is actually the better value. And then C2, and then C4, and then yeah, I did want to make a note and just like have a visual here, is that her weapon, unless you're using double hydro teams of some kind, and we're talking not like Skirk double hydro, we're not talking about like Skirk with Furina Yelan, that's still, you'll want Fav. I'm talking like Furina double hydro with Novelette. You're gonna funnel more particles into Furina. And even then with Stygian, even this is questionable. So I hesitate to really recommend her R1 ever. I know it's on the banner with Nefer, but it's really, unfortunately, not that great of a weapon. I honestly got it because I love the drip and I wanted to use it with her, but I've had a really hard time actually using it. I really wish it gave ER. I really wish it did. It would be so much better if it gave some ER, and I'm really sad that it doesn't. So we have to just use Favonius. Oh yeah, before I leave vertical investment, that is kind of how the vertical investment works with the newer characters. But if you're using Furina with the older characters, so if you're using Furina with Yoimiya, with Raiden, with Klee, with Eula, with Ito, with Ayaka, with Shao, with Wanderer, or lower scaling multiplying characters like Wriothesley, then Furina's constellations make a much, much bigger difference. So it's like, the older the character is, the worse the early constellations they have. Navia, Hu Tao after C1, which C1 is free anyways. Furina's constellations make a massive difference for these characters, and it's usually their best vertical investment path. So it's like Furina's constellations have so much value with the old characters, C1 and C2, and they have so much less value with the new characters with the broken constellation. So hopefully that helps you decide where to go vertically investment-wise. So honestly, I think that's it. I think it's pretty simple. I think that is the state of Furina in 2025. Remember to subscribe down below, check out the new podcast, and if you don't want to do any of that, that is totally fine. Just watching the video has been more than enough. Thanks so much. Bye for now.